My lackeys over on the website have recently said that we're getting a lot of mail about our test results and why they're not consistent. One of the key cars here that's drawn mail is the Nissan GTR. We've tested a total of 5 of these GTRs, and they've gone anywhere from low 3s, 0 to 60, to low 4s, and their quarter-mile time has varied by a full second. Some of you guys seem to be upset by this, and I guess I understand why. But it's a really hard thing to control because let me give you an idea of some of the things that change between these cars. We'll get a car sometimes very early in the program, and the first GTR was like this. There was an engineering test car. There were Nissan engineers on hand. In fact, the program head was there. It was tested at a Nissan test track. It was our first opportunity to get numbers. And I think they actually messed around with the software to get the best power and best launch possible out of the car. Aaron said that in the story, and if he didn't, he should have. But the fact is, that was going to be a really, really good running car. The next car we tested in California, and it was under completely different weather circumstances. It had a different type of tire on it because there's both Bridgestones and Dunlops available on GTRs. And the weather conditions were different, and we didn't have a Nissan engineer on hand. Now let me tell you a little bit about weather. We correct for weather because when the air is hot, it's less dense than when it's cold, and the engine makes less power. Now, it affects a turbo engine less than a naturally aspirated engine, but it affects all engines. The problem is we can correct for the air temperature and correct for the engine power, but there's no way to correct for what effect it's going to have on the launch of the vehicle. Now, the GTR's got launch control, but the launch control is optimized for a certain set of circumstances. If it's a really hot day and the engine isn't making as much power as the launch control program expects, it's going to launch more slowly, and there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. We cannot correct for that circumstance. Similarly, the cars vary, quite apart from whether they're cheated up or not. There's going to be some variation in peak boost pressure. The boost pressure is controlled by a sensor. One sensor might be reading a quarter PSI or half a PSI higher than another one. That could be 20 horsepower in a car like the GTR. Similarly, sometimes one car is really broken in, the other car has fewer miles on it. It depends on what we get, and we always try and break cars in and make sure they have plenty of miles on them when we test them, but we don't always have the time to do that. When we test cars here in Michigan, we have a different surface than we have in California. So there's a lot of variables that are out of our control, and we try and adjust for them like we do with the weather as much as possible, but we simply can't adjust for everything. Given a perfect world, we'd have a test track here that was 2 miles long, perfectly straight, and covered with a bubble that was climate controlled to 60 degrees, summer, winter, all the time. There'd be no wind inside, and before we tested a car, we'd go out to dealerships and we'd randomly buy 5 of them. We'd put 5 to 10,000 miles on each one of those cars. Then we'd test all 5, we'd average the results, and that's what we would publish. If I had an infinite budget, that's what I'd do, but I don't have that kind of budget, and I don't think you guys want to wait as long as it would take to do that kind of test. And as long as we do things the way we're doing them now, which is the best we can, you're going to see some variation car to car.